Lady K.
Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Lady K Chat, a podcast that is designed for men and women to become better versions of themselves, which is broadcast every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Various subjects will be spoken upon, such as relationships, health and wellness, personal development, wealth building, children, and so much more. She is a two-time Amazon best-selling author, an international speaker, and life coach. She is Lady K. And now for your host, Lady K.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lady K Chat podcast. This is your favorite host, Lady K, and I am so excited to be with you today. Today, I am going to be talking about a serious matter, and I really need you to pay attention, especially in those streets, because if you don't, it can cost you your life. And I want to make you aware of these types of predators, and they are out there and they are lurking. And I'm talking about a narcissist. Today's show is called I'm in Love with a Narcissist. I will be sharing my personal story on how I was affected being in two relationships with two different types of narcissists. But before I get into my story, I definitely want to share you some insights on narcissists because the word has been going around loosely. So I want to give some clarification. So there's actually a disorder called NPD, and that's Narcissistic Personality Disorder. And there is also the difference between someone who has the trait of a narcissist. See, a lot of people don't know that. They're just saying, oh, this person is a narcissist. No, correction. The person have traits of a narcissist. And let me elaborate what I mean by that, because the trait does mean that they have some characteristics of a narcissist, but they're not a narcissist. Versus NPD, that is a person who actually have the disorder and they actually are narcissists. And in order to be considered, according to the psychology world and the psychiatrist world, the NPD, they have to have a pattern. And out the pattern, 5 out of 9 have to be pervasive in order for them to be considered an NPD. So I do not want you to get confused with NPD and a person who have the trait of a narcissist. Woo! I hope that made a little bit of sense. But, I will elaborate as I go on and I share this. So again, the trait is just show that you just have the traits of a narcissist. But I just want to give you some ideas of what the traits are. It can be frequent lying, exaggeration. They rarely admit their flaws. They're highly aggressive when criticized if they don't know how to control themselves. They project a false image. They love breaking the rules. They have no boundaries. They stay in violation. And again, they're manipulative. And this is the use to control others just to gain some extensions of themselves. Because in actuality, these people, they have low self-esteem and they're constantly picking at themselves because they feel a void in their life. They know something is wrong, but they're not ready to tackle it. They're not ready to identify it. They're not being honest with themselves. It's very challenging to get a person who has an NPD order to see that they are a narcissist and to get treatment. It really happens. However, the traits of it, a little bit of all of us can have that trait, but some are extreme more than others. So now that you have an idea, let me share my story with you. And I'm actually going to tell you about 2 relationships I was in and how these 2 people have the 2 different types of narcissism. So my first one, This was about 20 years ago. And I was young. I was a teenager. And this guy that I met, I'm going to call him Pretty Boy because that's exactly what he was. He was a pretty boy. You know, back then, light skin was in and nice eyes and nice hair. And that's what I got myself caught into. But I didn't know because at that time, honestly, if you really want to think about it, I was a victim. But I transitioned out of that. But let me just tell you, elaborate about this guy. So, Pretty Boy, I met him. He told me he was maybe a year or two older than me. He said he was a senior in high school. He talked very highly about himself, the sports that he was in, told me about how he loved his mom and his stepbrother, and his dad wasn't around and he didn't want to be like his dad and he wanted to make sure of that. So we lived an hour away from one another, right? So it's kind of like it was a weekend relationship. So we would have a meeting spot every weekend. And I'm from New York, guys. So we will meet in 42nd Street. And, you know, it was great. It's always great in the beginning, but I then start to pick up some flags. I ignored the flags. Please don't ignore the flags. But one of the biggest signs was that he was extremely jealous. And it drove me crazy. He would do things like put me on a pedestal, tell me I'm beautiful, and then shortly say, oh, I know you got men chasing after you. And I know when I'm not around, you're probably out there cheating on me. And here's me, I'm trying to reassure him, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. Young and naive. And this was a constant battle. This was a constant thing that he picked on me. And not even just that, the constant phone calls, especially if I missed his call. He didn't like that because he felt that I was disrespecting him by avoiding his calls. So he made everything about him because he will follow up with me by saying, do you love me? And me being young, I'm like, yeah, I love you. So he said, if you love me, why would you want to upset me? And I was like, wow, talk to me like I was a child. And I'm like, that's not the case. But I want to share this one particular story that was like kind of crazy. And it put things in perspective to me now that I'm older. So one day when we was at our meeting spot, I was there first and I was waiting for him. And while I was waiting for him, the guy that worked there came over and started talking to me. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, listen, please walk away from me before my boyfriend comes because I do not want him to see me with you. I don't want any problem. And as he's walking away, guess who stepped in the room? Pretty Boy. And it wasn't pretty because he went up to the guy. I don't know what he said to him. He just ran out the restaurant, and here's me chasing him down 42nd Street. And I was trying to get his attention for at least, 15 to 20 minutes. And we're walking down a very busy street. Anybody that knows 42nd Street is very crowded. So can you imagine? I'm like behind him, trying to chase behind him, and he's ahead of me. But then when he proceeded to slow down, he told me he was sorry. And then he asked me, he said, are you sorry? And I said, because I didn't want no headache, I said, I apologize. Because we already know when you start to get to know a person, you start to see their patterns, you try to avoid getting them upset. That is highly a sign that you're dealing with someone that's a narcissist. And to be honest, they are abusive. Not only are they psychologically abusive, it can lead into physical. But in my case, it was more psychologically. He played the psychology game to the T. And I actually remember one day we was at a point in our relationship where it was blossoming because we was together for almost 2 years. And by that time, I was about to graduate high school, you know, and transition. And we had a conversation, and he said to me, I think we need to get our own place. You know, let's go upstate New York. And I said, that's too far from my family. I'll be too far from my family. And just like that, he looked me dead in my face and said, So I said, wow. And then there was other little things that was said to me. If I can't have you, nobody else can't have you. And it was just, honestly, it was too much for me. And it was too much for me because I wasn't raised in that type of environment. I had family who loved me. I had family who nourished me. I had brothers and cousins that I did not tell them about him because I know, I just know that it wasn't going to go lightly. And I never brought him around my family. And he never asked to be around my family, too. So, ladies, that is something that you definitely have to take into consideration. Excuse me, while you're dating, because signs like that indicate something is wrong. Again, they're hiding. These are people that feel a void in their life and they need you to fill the void because they're insecure and they don't love themselves. Shoot, they don't even love you. You think they love you. They're going to tell you they love you, but in all actuality, they don't. But I have to tell you something that was the last straw for me. We got into an altercation and he pinned me in the corner. And he said, if you ever in your life try to go against me, I will kill you. Yeah. And at that moment, I knew I had to get out. If I stayed in that relationship, it would have turned physical. Like I said, that relationship lasted 2 years. It was dangerous and it was toxic. And I knew I deserved better and I got myself out. I was single for a while. And the crazy thing about it, when I was experiencing all of this, I never told my friends and family what I was going through. And I didn't tell them because at that time of my life, I was the person who everyone's looked at me and said, oh, she's so strong. She would never accept anything like that. But in all actuality, I wasn't. And I had to forgive myself. See, when I was younger, I didn't understand yet. But as I am older now and I reflect back, and I said, that girl, in order for a predator like him to approach me, because you have to remember, a predator needs a prey. They need the prey to glorify them. They need the prey to give them reassurance. And at that time, he saw something in me. He saw that little naive girl. However, that little naive girl has some fight in her. And because she has some fight in her, he could not take it. And this is why the relationship didn't last. Now, he used to always tell me, oh, if you leave me, I'm going to kill you. Yeah, he did tell me that. But even though I was afraid, I was like, no, I said, I'd rather step out. And if we're going to brawl, we're going to brawl. But that was not the case. Eventually, he left me alone. And I was happy about that. But I do want to say this to you. Remember I told you I didn't tell my family because I was afraid of the judgment? My mom, they always know, my mom and my grandmother, they knew something was wrong with me. They saw the sadness. They saw my attitude. They saw how I was doing things differently. And I didn't bring him around to meet my mother and my grandmother until like the ending of the relationship. And even that gave them confirmation that something was wrong and they knew. But again, by that time, I ended it and I just gave myself some time because I knew I needed to be at peace. And Christian Boy was more of who had traits of a narcissist. And in his traits, it was covert. And they have that's the special name that they have for all these different narcissists. But on his end, he played victim. And these type of people, they need people to, again, give them constant reassurance, because they tend to put themselves down and they just need to be glorified. So, like I said, his deal was he needed constant reinsurance. If I even dare to pay attention to like my hair, my schoolwork, it was a problem. If I wanted to go visit someone, like a family member 2 hours away, and I wanted to come back the next day, it was a problem. It was saying, he said, why do you have to go? I'm here. Why do you need them? I'm here. Why do you need a Facebook account? You have me. Oh boy, he was draining, very draining. So I realized what he used to do was anytime I put myself or focus on myself and he was out in the spotlight, it was a problem. And I want to tell you what he did. In the public's eye, he glorified me. But behind closed doors, it was different. It was so different because it's like he would put on the facade. Remember I told you that they like to exaggerate and they like to put on the front? That was him. I was the trophy girlfriend, and I was the one, because I had things going on for myself. That it wasn't the fact that, oh, she's great. It's the fact that it made him look great. It was the part that he was like, yes, there go the admiration because the people are eyeballing my girl and it feels good and I love it. But when my lady is home, she needs to give me all the attentions. Now listen, ladies, I want to tell you something. There is a difference between making time for your spouse or your significant other and a difference between somebody who needs constant admiration. And as I told you before, it was very draining. And I just didn't know how long I can deal with it. But I stuck around because I was hoping for change and I was hoping he'll come around. But in actuality, that wasn't the case because it continues. Now, even though in the streets, he highlighted me, but when it came to certain people, he would talk about me. And I remember one day, a mutual friend of ours said she had a conversation with him, and all she kept hearing about was she needs to do this, she needs to do that, and she's like, "But what about you?" He was like, "Yeah, I know about me, but her." I'm like, you see, he reshifted everything back to me on what I needed to do and how I needed to step my game up. And guess what? I did do those things, but it wasn't enough. And it says it in the word, the flesh is never satisfied. He was never satisfied. So what did he do? He walked away from the relationship. Thank you for
Lady K.